Welcome back, Atlanta. We're so excited to be back in studio today. Today, I'm excited because I get to talk to Ernie Suggs from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And this man here is a dinosaur in Atlanta. He's been doing some excellent work. We're going to dig and deeper into his journey and how he got here into Atlanta. We're going to talk about his story. And today we have a treat for all our Black men out there, so you want to stay until the end. Last week we talked about the Queen and You, and that was dedicated to our beautiful Black queens. Today is for our Black kings out there. So there is a king in you, Black men. You're watching, you're listening, stay until the end. Because Ernie has some words of encouragement and wisdom for you. We're going to start off first by just saying hi. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you very much. Did you call me a dinosaur?
Yes, a good way. So
I thought you were going to say a dynamo. Then you said dinosaur.
Dynamite, but
okay.
Dinosaur in a sense that I feel like you have such a breadth of experience.
Oh, well, thank you. You made up for it.
You've been doing amazing work. I'm looking at your bio, and we talked a little bit before we started recording about some of the things that you've been doing out here. And I think you have so much history.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, we're glad to have you. Thank you for sharing this space with me.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So many probably already know you, but for those that don't, I want to highlight some key points in his bio. Ernie Suggs has been a reporter at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution since 1997. He currently covering race and culture, as well as a variety of breaking national news and investigative stories. A veteran of nearly 30 years as a news reporter, he previously reported for newspapers in New York City and Durham, covering stories ranging from politics to civil rights to higher education. Since 2016, he has managed the AGC's award-winning Black History Month project through AJC Sepia, the paper's Black news curation site. He's a 1990 graduate, North Carolina, if you're out there listening, of North Carolina Central University with a degree in English literature. Suggs was also a 2009 Harvard University, same here, Neiman Fellow, but I was at the executive program for 2 years, and I'm serving as a moderator for Harvard now.
Nice.
He is currently on the Neiman Foundation Board of Trustees and a former national vice president of the National Association of Black Journalists. Born in Brooklyn, New York, if y'all listening, shout out to y'all, and raised in Rocky Mountain, North Carolina. He has an obsession for Prince. I love it. Spike Lee movies. I feel you on that one. Hamilton and the New York Yankees is unmatched. Oh, man, he did it, y'all. New York Yankees out in Atlanta, really?
Exactly. It's tough out here.
Well, I'm so glad to have you. I know that these are some of the things highlighted in your bio, but certainly doesn't cover the breadth of the things that you've been doing here. Are there things that you wanted to share that was not highlighted in your bio?
Well, I mean, I appreciate you reading my bio. Like Malcolm X used to say, make it plain. You don't need to read all that stuff. But if you were to ask me if there's something that's missing, I did in 2022 publish my first book, The Many Lives of Andrew Young.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, which was a biography of the former mayor and former ambassador, former congressman. He's done everything, former civil rights leader.
Wow.
So I had the great opportunity to spend, I guess, part of the pandemic, 2020, working from home and writing a book. So I just, spent all of 2020 and 2021 putting it together and came out last March. So it's been about a year. So we're coming up on a year of that, and it's done very well. And hopefully you all will pick it up.
How do people get a copy of that book?
Well, it's on Amazon. It's in Barnes & Nobles. It's everywhere. If you live in Atlanta, if you want to get a signed copy, there's a place called Acapella Books.
Okay.
That they have signed copies by me and the ambassador.
Nice.
If you do live in Atlanta, we are going to be at Emory University on the 22nd of February.
Okay.
And at the Center for Civil and Human Rights on the 23rd of February. So we've been all over the country touring, all over. So we're kind of having a couple of Black History Month events in this February.
I love it. So I am going to try my best to commit to the February 22nd one at Emory University. I would love to be there, get a signed copy of it, and see the great work that you're doing in person.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing.
The ambassador would love to meet you.
Amazing. I love that. See, you made some connections. So today we're talking about the king in you, right? But I want to know a little more about your background, sort of what led you into all the things that you're doing today. What was that? What was your story and your trajectory?
Well, as you mentioned, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and I lived there until I was about 12 years old.
Right.
We moved from New York my mother was originally from North Carolina.
Right.
So we would go, just a whole kind of reverse migration thing. She moved in the 1960s from North Carolina to New York.
Right.
And then in the 1980s, you're from New York. The 1980s in New York, in Brooklyn, was not the greatest place in the world.
Right.
With the advent of crack, just the whole city was changing.
Right.
So as I said, we were going to North Carolina every summer anyway. So she decided that we're going to North Carolina to live permanently. Which was fine. So it wasn't a culture shock to me at all. So,
right.
And we moved to Rocky Mount, North Carolina, which is a small town. It's not like Brooklyn. And, I kind of went there. I went to high school there. I thrived there. I ended up going to North Carolina Central University, which is a historically black college in Durham, North Carolina. I did very well there. And when I say I did very well there, I'm meaning that it was just a great experience.
Right.
It was just a great experience being at a black college, understanding, getting kind of like, because, growing up in Brooklyn and even growing up in Rocky Mount, you're in kind of a mixed, it's, New York City.
Melting pot.
New York City is a melting pot. And then in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, it was like black and white, just split down the middle. So going to a black college, it was just all black. And you can really, really understand who you are.
Yeah.
And I always tell people that historically black colleges are kind of, people always argue that they're not diverse. But I think they're very diverse in the sense that once you walk in there, you are on equal footing with everyone. So you can be president of the student body. You can be Miss North Carolina Central or the editor of the Campus Echo. Or, you can do whatever you want to. Whereas when you go to other schools, that's not always automatically the case.
Absolutely not. I can tell you that.
I think that they're, although they're mostly black, it's very democratic at historically black colleges because everyone gets a chance.
Yes.
So I did that. I graduated in 1990. Like you said, I got my first job in New York City. And then I moved back to Durham to work at the newspaper. And then I moved here to Atlanta in 1997. So, interestingly enough, Atlanta, I'm not from Atlanta, obviously. And Atlanta's been the place that I've lived the longest.
Yes.
And although I still feel more connected with New York and more connected with North Carolina, those are my homes.
Yeah.
But Atlanta is where I've been for 25 plus years now.
This would be considered home too, right?
It is, but it's
25
just
years.
It's home in the sense that I've lived here a long time. But there's still a kind of strange thing. I'm not sure how long you've been here, but it's still a kind of strange thing that I'm not from here.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Douglas High School. I didn't go to Washington High School. I didn't go to Morehouse.
Yeah.
So, I know everybody in town.
Yeah.
I'm putting this in air quotes for those listening. I put this in air quotes that I'm inside. I'm in the circle.
Right.
But I'm still not part of
a transplant.
Right? Yeah, I still consider myself like a transplant,
And I love that. We talked about Atlanta being this place of like Black Mecca, right? But it's interesting that so many people it's almost reverse migration, sort of like what you talked about, what Mom did when you were growing up. But for us, what we're seeing is a lot of people are leaving New York in the north and they're moving to Atlanta. They're moving to the south. They're moving to parts of North Carolina.
Charlotte,
Yeah, right. And to Atlanta. And so there's so much, this has been now, like you mentioned, the hub for Blackness, for Black excellence. And you've been able to cover these stories.
Yeah.
So tell me what that's been like. What are some of the stories that you've covered?
Well, very quickly, when I moved here in 96, 97, right after the Olympics, I wanted to come here because it was this Black Mecca. It was like, all Black people are going to Atlanta and all Black people are rich and, they've got these big houses and all this stuff is going on. So I was part of that wave in the 1990s who wanted to come to Atlanta. And so arriving here, and being here for 25 plus years, with opportunities to go and whatever. But arriving here, one of my first jobs was to write about race, to write about civil rights. And when you think about it, in 1997, that's 25 years ago now, more than 25 years ago now. But you think about civil rights, Coretta Scott King was still alive. Joe Lowry was still alive. C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, James Orange, Hosea Williams. All these people were still alive. So as a young Black man who read about these people in college and read about them in high school, getting a chance to know them and meet them and write about them was an amazing experience. Wow. So, coming into Atlanta was, it was real. What you all heard about, it was real because all these people whom I call like kind of the second founding fathers, because they made America in the 1960s and 50s and what they did through the activism. They made America closer to what Hamilton, you talk about Hamilton, I like Hamilton, but it made America closer to what Hamilton and Washington and Adams were, quote unquote, saying that they wanted.
Right.
So, so coming here then and seeing that, and now it's shifted. Unfortunately, a lot of these people have passed on.
Right.
The civil rights era now is 50 or 60 years. Martin Luther King's been dead for over 55 years.
Oh, yeah.
Which is crazy.
It's definitely been, yeah.
Yeah. He's been gone for a while. So, the civil rights era is still, Atlanta's still the birthplace of the civil rights era, but things have changed. In 1973, Maynard Jackson was elected mayor, which was an extension of the civil rights movement because then in the 1970s, Black people were seeking political office as an extension of how we can lend our voices to things and be in those important spaces.
Right.
So Atlanta has had an unbroken string of Black mayors. So we are at the forefront politically. We're at the forefront socially, culturally, with music and television. And
even with the television, I'm seeing so many movies and films being shot out here, but even to Tyler Perry's studio.
Tyler Perry's studio.
Been able to do.
Yeah, he's, they're shooting the Avengers in Tyler Perry's studio.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that he's doing. So Atlanta, and I wrote a story about this a couple of years ago, Atlanta, the saying Atlanta influences everything. And that's true.
Right.
We are at the forefront of fashion and music and everything. So it's been a great experience for me kind of watching the city transform into this sleepy city. I live in the suburbs now, but driving into the city now, I'm just sometimes get lost. I got lost coming here tonight, as you know.
Did say you would
You sometimes get lost because there's so much construction going on.
Right.
And everything has changed. And things are just not the way they were when I moved here.
Right.
Which is good.
Yeah. Almost a lot of progression, a lot of evolving. And what's interesting is you talked about you were a part of the 1997 wave of people that were migrating to Atlanta. There is a wave of people that are migrating since the pandemic. And one real estate agent referred to it as the Great Exodus. And she said many people are fleeing New York. Blacks are fleeing New York and are coming to Atlanta to settle down and to settle in because this is the place, like you said.
Yeah.
It's the hub.
Yeah, and it's, it's an easy, I lived in New York City. I lived in Boston. Atlanta is an easier place to live.
Oh, yeah.
Aside from the traffic.
Oh, yeah.
But it's
that traffic. We're going to have to fix that.
Yeah. I don't know how we're going to fix that.
I don't know either.
But it's an easy place to live. You can go shopping. You can, if you have a car, you can drive places and, get stuff. And, it's close to the airports, the malls. It's close to a lot of other southern places where a lot of our roots are. So, Atlanta's like that place that people want to be.
Absolutely. So, civil rights movement, what were some of the things that you covered during, and you talked about some of the people that you were able to work with, stories that you covered. Was there one in particular that you really wanted to highlight that you're really proud about?
One particular story?
Yeah. During that time.
That's a hard question because it's funny because as a journalist for so long, you forget a lot of stuff. I can read a story that I wrote a year ago and I have no recollection of what I did. But, just covering and getting to know these people.
Right.
I've done a lot of stuff on historically Black colleges, which I'm very proud of. I unfortunately or fortunately have covered, the funerals of these great civil rights leaders. So I covered Rosa Parks' funeral and Coretta Scott King's and John Lewis and Joe Lowry, so kind of telling their stories even in their passings has been very important to me.
Yes.
But just, just kind of, I think the most important thing generally that I have done is, and as I mentioned, since I moved here, I've covered race, I've covered Black culture, is telling those stories.
Yeah.
Because sometimes those stories aren't told.
Right.
A story that I recently did was on the lacrosse team at Spelman College. Now, a lot of people say, well, why would you do a story about a lacrosse team at Spelman College, which is an elite all-women's Black school? It's not a major sport, but that's a story that if I hadn't done it, no one would have done it, right? And you have these women who are there who are, struggling to find playing time and struggling to get on the field to try to play this game in the middle of being at a very highly competitive college, Spelman College, where you're expected to go there and then go to medical school at Harvard or wherever. And they're trying to play lacrosse. They're trying to build their bodies and they're trying to build their spiritual minds to play lacrosse.
Right.
So these are the kind of stories that are important to tell that are going to be otherwise overlooked. So that's that's what I'm most proud of, just kind of
Love
telling
that.
the stories of people whose stories would not necessarily always be told.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm such a big advocate for Blacks telling the story and
Mhm.
telling it the way we should
Mhm.
through our lens. Taking control of our narrative because a lot of times through our history, our story has not been told.
Yes.
And when it has been told, it has not been told from our standpoint.
Mhm.
So I love the fact that you've been highlighting the stories of these great, amazing, renowned people,
Mhm.
and that you're even doing, college students who
Yeah. Yeah.
who need a chance and an opportunity for their story to be told.
Yeah, and
to be heard.
also, I didn't mean to cut you
No.
off, but I've been doing the Black History Month series at the paper for the last 8 years.
Yes.
And what that basically is that every February, of course, is Black History Month. So we have a story every day.
Right.
So,
Wow.
and again, we never want, my goal was never to tell the story that you already know.
Mm.
So up until this year, we had never, for example, done a story on Rosa Parks. Because
Wow.
Rosa Parks is the first person you know
Right.
about.
You see,
You
Black
learn about
History
it, Black
Month.
History Month. It was Rosa Parks.
Right.
So we didn't want to tell those stories. We wanted to tell stories about the tragic mulatto. We wanted to tell stories about double consciousness, about just different things, the talented 10th.
Right.
So every day in February for the last 8 years, we've done these unique stories
Wow.
about different aspects of Black life. This year, and I said we didn't want to do the story about Rosa Parks. This year, we had to do the story about Rosa Parks because the national theme of Black History Month is resistance. So every story that we're writing this year is about resistance. And Rosa Parks is the ultimate example of Black resistance.
That's right.
We've done stories about the Igbo landing where in 1803, a group of Africans who were captured off the coast, they were captured in Nigeria and they were brought to the coast of Savannah. And instead of succumbing to slavery, they fought back and technically walked back to Africa.
What?
Or literally, they committed mass suicide. It was a mass suicide, and they walked back into the ocean. And
Wow.
so the legend or the myth is that they walked, or the Africans who walked back or flew back to Africa. So these are the kind of stories that we want to tell, just about different aspects of life, and just stories that a newspaper wouldn't necessarily always tell
Or we may not otherwise ever hear.
or hear about.
Right.
Yes.
I'm sure you took a trip to the Black Museum, Black Museum in Washington, D.C.
Oh,
I don't
sure.
remember
Yeah.
the name of it.
Yeah, I was
but-
there when it opened. Yeah.
Yes. And what I loved was it depicted our history in such a way that I've never seen it laid out before, especially going through the floors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very emotional. But was really interesting to me where there were things that I seen that I've never heard about my entire life. Not in college, not in graduate school, not at Harvard, not at Columbia, nowhere.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time that I'm seeing some of these things. So it's really interesting sometimes, Black history, I often see it as something that we have to almost go and find.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's often hidden.
Yeah.
We have to go and sort of go on this journey to find our history.
Yeah.
And,
And that's what I try to do. I try to find those stories and tell them, tell those unique stories,
right.
and bring that to and to the paper's credit, I have full reign to do whatever I want to do for the Black History Month series.
Yes.
And I have a staff of reporters who do all the heavy lifting. But we basically write about what we want to write about. That's interesting, and we'll continue forwarding the narrative of who we are as Black people.
That leads me into my question of what is the story of the Black man in America? What is that story like? I know that's loaded, so you unpack that how you want it.
Well, I mean, I think in general, the story of the Black man is hard. It's always going to be hard because we are always going to be feared. We're always going to be misconstrued, underappreciated.
Right.
Just like the Black woman. Malcolm X said the Black woman is the most underappreciated person on earth. But the Black man has to deal with that. We have to deal with how our Black women are treated.
Right.
And we have to deal with how we are treated and looked upon and feared and so for me as a Black man, I've been, I grew up in Brooklyn, and then I grew up in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I have privilege. I understand that I have privilege having gone to college and graduated and gone to Harvard and have a good job and a home and all that kind of stuff. But I still, and I still fear or feel at times that, who's watching me or, how I need to carry myself or navigate myself.
Right.
I can't go to the office not dressed well. And not that no one's ever said anything to me, but, when I go to the office, I know I have to dress well.
Right.
when I know I have to do certain things. I know I have to be certain places because I know I'm judged differently.
Right.
And and I'm not saying this just about my job, but I'm judged differently as a
Right.
Black man. When I walk into a store, it's just, I try, this is kind of weird, but I try not to use plastic bags.
Right.
Right. So, because it's wasteful, it's, destroys the environment and all that kind of stuff. So I try not to use a plastic bags.
Right.
So, whenever I go to a grocery store and I forget to bring my little bag, I basically carry my food out, carrying the steak out or whatever. But I'm always very, very conscious of me walking out with food, or me walking out of a grocery store with food or with groceries in my hand, because you never know when someone's going to stop you. You never know when you're driving down the street and you're going to be pulled over. And we see so much. We see it. We saw what happened a few weeks ago. We just see so much of just how you can just get in trouble for just existing sometimes. And that's a lot of burden. That's a big burden on us. So, I try to, and again, nothing has ever happened to me, thank God. I've never been arrested, never been stopped by the police, never been harassed by the police. But, it's sad that you have to think about it. It's sad that you have to, consider it. But it's probably also good because it also kind of puts us on alert. It makes us, I think it makes us better and stronger. And, someone, I never want to do something that's, I never want, obviously you never want to do something that's going to get you in trouble or that's going to, do something stupid that's going to make you lose your job or, lose your livelihood or whatever.
Right.
But as Black men also, we have to understand that sometimes we're not going to do anything that's stupid, and we can still lose our livelihood.
Right.
We can still lose our jobs. We can still lose our lives or go to jail or whatever. So we have to be we have to be extra careful.
Right.
And, here in Atlanta, the wealth gap is tremendous between Blacks and whites and between, Atlanta's this melting pot that we talk about, this mecca, this cultural beacon, but there's also this huge gap in terms of how much money people are making. So when you come to Atlanta, you see the poverty. You see, you see the wealth, and you see the people riding around with Bentleys and limousines, and you see Real Housewives of Atlanta.
That's right.
But then when I was in downtown Atlanta today, and right at the King Center, there's a woman there, pregnant, Black woman begging for food, crying and begging for food.
Yeah.
So, and that's right there in the heart of
the heart
of Atlanta.
That's
so
right.
it's it's tough out here for Black people.
Yeah.
It's good, and we're at the best place we've been ever. Obviously ever. We had a Black president. We've had Black politicians. We are doing very well. We are very exposed, but there's still so many of us who are still being left behind.
Yeah.
So many Black boys, so many Black men who are still being left behind. So it continues to be a struggle, and I just think that there's so much more that we can do as Black men to help. There's as I mentioned, I'm very blessed to be where I am in life, but I'm pretty sure that I could be doing more. I can be volunteering more probably. I can be, more active in my fraternity and my alumni association. But it's.
But you're also doing what needs to be done, your purpose, and that is you're essentially documenting history as live as it goes, as it's happening. And I think that's something that's really powerful that that society needs, because while these events are occurring, while these leaders are evolving and coming into existence and coming into their own and emerging, you're live documenting that. Yeah. And I think that's such a powerful thing to do. And so I love the fact that you're doing that. And so you're doing a lot more. Sometimes we think we're not doing enough, but we're doing so much. You're doing a lot more through your book, inspiring people, highlighting these amazing stories.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think we all, you bring up a good point. We all do our part. And everyone's part is different.
Right.
And it all fits into the fabric of everything.
Yes.
And when you talk about telling stories, when you asked me earlier what was I proud of or what my biggest story, then I've done so much that I forgot. But then I forgot, when you talk about the whole thing about documenting stories, during the whole Black Lives Matter, when
Yes.
we were losing all these black men. You know, I was in Ferguson, I was in Baltimore. I covered the Charleston church massacre. You know, even I covered the Las Vegas shooting and the Pulse shooting. So I've seen kind of both sides of this. Kind of the how we're accomplished and risen and all this kind of stuff, but also how we are dogged and just abused and all these lives that are being lost. So I've been on both sides of it in terms of covering it and seeing it, and I guess that's a blessing and a curse,
Right.
because even as a black man, and I'm going all over the place.
No, this
but
is
even
good.
as a black man, we have to think about our mental health
That's right.
and how we take care of ourselves.
That's right.
And as I mentioned, my first kind of thing that I covered that was major in terms of black trauma was Ferguson. And I was in the middle of Ferguson covering all that for like 2 weeks. And then I went to Baltimore. And then, I went to Charleston twice for shootings. I went to Charleston for the massacre of the church, to Orlando for Pulse.
Wow.
I've been to so many places. I've sometimes Charlotte for, So at some point, I had to step back because almost every weekend, or I would, I would wake up in the morning and the first thing I always do was turn on CNN. And if there was a shooting or something happened somewhere, I knew I was going to probably have to get on the plane to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So at some point, you have to step back and kind of take self-control of yourself and kind of take control of your own care.
That's right.
Because it was just so much, and it was just so much it seems like every weekend, every month, I was on the ground at another place where a black man had been killed by the police or shot, or there was a mass murder or shooting. And I think right after the Charleston massacre, it was when I was like, I got to step back. I got to, because that one was also, these people were so innocent. And, they were in a church and they were inviting someone into their church and he kills them. So, I think that happened on a Wednesday.
Right.
And I think that Thursday I was in the church. I remember I was in the basement of the church and there was still blood on the ceiling tiles.
You were in the place and it was.
Yeah, there was still blood on the ceiling tiles.
My goodness.
So at that point, after that assignment, I was, I got to step back because it's but so much that someone can take.
Absolutely.
And it can drive you nuts.
You talked about the mental health of a black man, and I think, especially in your work, when you're exposed, right, we call it secondary trauma.
Yeah.
And that may not be direct trauma, so it may not have happened to you directly, but the fact that you're seeing it, or vicarious trauma, you're living through the trauma of other people. So you're covering these stories, and it's very traumatizing. Then it starts to take a toll on yourself.
Yes.
But you mentioned black mental health, and I think that's really important because from what I can see, I'm a black woman, I'm not a black man, but I believe a lot of times, and we had a great segment on this last year where we had a panel on black men mental health. And it was interesting because black men typically don't like to talk, right? But they were just talking away. They were like, we need to have more of these. And we had black doctors and politicians that were on this panel. And what was interesting was that they talked about wanting to have a space, but not necessarily feeling like there was a space for them in the realm of therapy. And I don't know if that's been something that you can relate to or you've seen with other black men.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also kind of goes back to the whole burden of being a black man.
Right.
We have to be strong. We have to be strong for our women. We have to be strong for our children.
Right.
We have to be strong for ourselves.
Right.
And a lot of times we see seeking mental health as a weakness. And when we see, weaknesses, even sometimes we don't even go to the doctor.
Right.
For physical ailments. So even mental ailments, that's something totally different. So we're scared of that. And, you talk about mental health, I got a call last week about a guy that I went to college with who was this strong, tall, good-looking guy, had all the girls and everything. He's my age now.
Right.
And he killed himself.
Ooh.
And no one in his family knew. No one knew. And, everybody, in our college circles were just shocked that this guy killed himself. And, who knows what he was going through or how he was. I just saw him at homecoming.
Wow.
And we took photos and we talked for a half hour and just tripping and laughing about college days.
Yeah.
And 4 months later, he kills himself. So, I think that, there's so much heaviness on us.
Yeah.
And I think we need to really, really take these opportunities to heal ourselves and to talk about what's troubling us, or have conversations, or have people that you can talk to.
Yeah.
Whether it's your friends. Black men are scared to be vulnerable to other men. We're scared to tell our, secrets and weaknesses to other men because it makes us seem like we're weak.
Yeah.
But, that's, I find that people who do that are the stronger ones.
Yeah.
If you can do that, you're strong, and you are unburdening yourself, or you're at least telling people, it's just, what I try to do now is whenever someone calls me, I try to call them back. Because you just never know.
Right.
You just never know.
That's very true.
So, or if I'm thinking about somebody, I'll call them and say, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Because you just never know. You never know what someone's going through. And,
That's right.
if someone had called this guy an hour before he did this, would something have changed? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. But, it's important,
You brought up some really important points. We're going to take a little 5 extra minutes because we're in the middle of an interesting topic, and I didn't want to just cut it as abruptly because you're talking about suicide, and I'm as a licensed master social worker and that does mental health work all the time. I wanted to take a moment because I know that suicide has been rising and prevalent, and we seen not too long ago. I don't remember the black guy's name, but he took his life too. I think it was a few months ago. It was one of these stars. Again, don't remember.
With the Ellen show?
Yes.
Yes, I forgot his name, but I know you're talking about. Yes.
And so, and like you said, sometimes it's, had you asked, are you okay? That could have saved his life, right? We don't know, but it could have been.
Could have, yeah.
And so I think it's interesting that you talked about black men not necessarily feeling like they could be vulnerable. And I think that we took a step back into history, into our history, into slavery that comes from a place, right? Because black men were not able to ever be vulnerable and could never really show their weakness, right? Because they'd be killed for it.
And I believe in generational trauma. I believe in,
absolutely. It's a real
things
thing.
that are in your DNA and your genes, that we've been, as American black men have been struggling with this for 400 years.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, because we've always just been so beaten down. And so beaten down while also being looked at as someone who's supposed to be strong, whether it's strong to pick the cotton or pick the tobacco,
right,
or hail, do whatever, or strong now to protect your family, or just to be hard. Sometimes it's just that whole thing about you got to be hard, you got to be tough, you got to be, I take photographs of myself every day for Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and my aunt called me and was like, why are you always looking so mad in your photos? And I was like, I'm not looking mad, I'm looking hard. And she was like, you're not hard. I
can't smile.
Yeah, she's like, you're not hard. So it's just like, we try to, put on this mask of hardness and, we got to be tough or we got to do this. But we are, we need help as well. We need to be hugged or, someone needs to talk to us and someone needs to, tell us it's going to be okay sometimes. And I think sometimes we are so resistant of that, or so resistant of asking for it or acting on it.
Right.
And, because we're just looked at, the black woman, you guys are doing an amazing job holding us up.
We are the ones that hold it together, y'all. Black women out here. Shout out to y'all listening.
Shout out to the black woman.
I love that. And we need each other. Black women need black men. We rely on you. Black men, I know you need us. Can't do nothing without us now.
Without you all.
So we need each other. But we, in our last few minutes, if you can just speak to all the black kings that are listening, and just some words of wisdom, whatever you want to share with them.
Well, what would I say to the black kings? I would say, be yourself and understand that you can do anything you want.
Yes.
I grew up. I'm probably not supposed to be here in this this podcast studio talking to you.
Wow.
I grew up in Brooklyn, as you know. A lot of males that I grew up with, or didn't make it. They didn't make it. Not necessarily they're alive, but they just didn't make it out.
Right.
Even in North Carolina. So the fact that I was the first person in my family to go to college.
Wow.
The fact that I went to Harvard University.
Right.
The fact that I have a job. the fact that I've been lucky or blessed enough to always have had a job since I graduated from college. Literally, I worked every day since I graduated from college.
Wow.
So I understand that, if you put your, and people say this all the time, you put your mind to it, but, there is success out there for you if you want it. You can do whatever you want.
I love it.
I'm an example of that. I could do, and not to say that I wasn't supposed to be here because I had a great mom and a great father and everything like that, but, there's so much out there for us as Black men, as young, as Black kids. Sometimes when I walking down the street and I see a bunch of Black kids, boys, 14, 15 years old, and they're goofing around and acting crazy, and I'm just thinking about that's how we used to be. Just like what is there to be afraid of with these guys who are just, So there's so much out there. There's so many opportunities. And you just got to do it. And I think that we can do whatever we want. We've shown we can do whatever we want because whereas we have to always portray that strength, we are very strong because we have gone through so much for 400 years. We have achieved so much. We are, when they went to Africa to bring us here to enslave us, we're the ones who survived. Our ancestors are the ones who were strong enough to survive through those bottom of those ships. So we have that in our DNA. We have the trauma, but we also have the strength that we can do whatever we want to. And whenever we have been given the opportunity, we have succeeded, whether it's Barack Obama being president of the United States or Jackie Robinson being the first Black ball player and also being good enough to be in the Hall of Fame.
That's right.
So Michael Jackson, Prince, so whenever Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, whenever we get the opportunity, whenever we get the opportunity, we thrive in it.
That's right.
So we can do whatever we want.
I love that. You said something just really resonated with me. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to think about this another time, but you said we're the ones that survived in the ships, and that's in our DNA. Yes. And so, I mean, that really is it. We are strong.
Yeah,
we are. Black men, you are strong. You are intelligent. You are creative. You are inventors. You are intellectuals. You are historians. You are doing it. And so I just appreciate you as one of our Black kings out here that's doing amazing work in Metro Atlanta.
Well, thank you very much. Am I a king or a dinosaur? I'm still kind of salty about that.
You're definitely a king. So we got this.
Is T-Rex a king dinosaur or something?
We got to smooth that over. Definitely a Black king.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, thank you for being here and continue doing the great work that you're doing out here in Atlanta. I know you will.
Thank you. You too.
Yes, thank you so much.
And these are forums that we need as well to have these kind of conversations. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
And you're doing a great job. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love this. So all of you listening out there, you heard Ernie Suggs. He is doing amazing work. Please check out his book out there.
The Many Lives of Andrew Young.
The Many Lives of Andrew Young. You have to check it out. I'm going to go get my own signed copy because I got to read this. Just hearing you, I've been inspired. You have so much wisdom that this generation needs. And one of the things that you mentioned shortly was mentoring. And that's one of the things that Black men need. They need a brotherhood to come together to hold them up.
Yeah. And mentoring, I know we're running out of time, but mentoring is very important. And I still have mentors that I still deal with and talk to and seek advice from. And I think that, by me being at the paper now for 27 years now, we have a lot of young Black men and a lot of young Black women that I love to mentor and love to be there for them when they have questions and concerns. So, it's a full circle, I'm learning and I'm trying to teach people.
I love it. I love it. And I also do some mentoring as well. I'm still working my way up the ropes, but still I do some mentoring as well. And so mentorship is important, and we need Black powerful figures like Mr. Ernie out here mentoring our Black boys and even our Black men.
Oh, yeah.
So we appreciate you. Continue your great work.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening today. We want you to share this message out. So whether you're listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify, share this message out to a Black man, to your father, brother, your husband, whoever it is. We want to encourage our Black men because they really are kings. So Black men, there is truly a king in you. Be encouraged. Like Mr. Ernie said, anything that you put your mind to, you can do it. There is Black resilience and strength that lies inside of you. Happy Black History Month to all of you. We love you all so much. Stay tuned. Next week, we'll be covering another segment on the Queen in You. We love you again, Atlanta. We'll see you soon. Stay tuned.